Hello, 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 YouTube. How are you guys doing? Hope you guys had a great weekend. You did some things that were specific to your self-care. You took care of you in ways that you haven't taken care of yourself before. And you did some things to get to know who you are again. And fall in love with yourself all over again. So this week, we're going to continue our segment on self-care. This week on Real Talk Therapy 101, with your girl Ebony, we are going to talk about self-awareness. And so we're in Self-Care 102. Last week, we did Self-Care 101. And before that, we looked at setting boundaries before we came into the segment of self-care. And if you're new to the channel, I want to say welcome. You're in for a treat. I guarantee you it's only going to get better from here. But here on Real Talk Therapy 101, we have conversations about our mental health. We don't call it treatment. We don't call it therapy. We just call it a real talk conversation where we're discussing, I'm discussing different strategies, interventions, and coping skills to help you get through your uncharted waters that you may mentally be stuck and or blocked in places that you don't know how to come out of. I am from North Carolina. I am a certified alcohol and drug counselor in the state of North Carolina, as well as a certified peer support specialist. And I am currently in school on the third leg of what I like to call it, and becoming a licensed clinical social worker. I am a daughter, a sister, a wife, a stepmother, a grandmother, a friend that, definitely doesn't mind helping anybody, but I am also human. And because I've gone through some things, and in order to help other people, having a real talk conversation about what they could be going through has always been helpful for me. Your struggle may not be my struggle. My struggle may not be your struggle, but we have to be open and honest enough to admit that we do struggle. And so I am working on a lot of different things with the channel, but it's just really to sit down and have a real talk conversation about what may be going on. Coming down the line, there will be actual conversations. There will be guests on the show, and then there will be, or on the channel, I'm saying the show. Or let me speak into existence. Oprah, I'm coming. Thank you for paving the way. But we will have guests, different people talking about different things that happen for real, and how we can get through those things and out of those things. And so what makes Real Talk Therapy 101 authentic to your girl is that I wear a custom made t-shirt for each episode or video or whatever you want to call it. And I try to keep it in line with what it is that we're talking about. I'm a lover of music of all genres, so you will hear me reference a lot of songs. Music is part of my personal therapy. And I am also addicted to Coach. So going into that, before I show off our shirt, I usually do a bag of the day. Here's today's bag, fanny pack, belt bag, whatever you may want to call it. But it is Coach. Wear it around my waist. A lot of room in this puppy here too. When I'm not, going too many places or doing too many things. And shoes of the day. So we reference those as kicks of the day. So let me kind of get down to those. See if I set back. So they're the Easter pinks. Some of you have seen those before. Right now, your girl is into Vapor Max. So, you'll see me wearing those. And today's shirt of the day, I don't know if you guys can see it that well. And you do see my fan is fell behind me, but it'll be all right. And that's another thing on Real Talk Therapy. I don't edit. I don't go through and take away what's real. I'm really trying to learn how to do YouTube while really trying to help people get through real life situations. And so real life, I had to maneuver because we're getting ready for the holidays and move some stuff around and move my location. But the fan fell and I ain't had time. But today's shirt says Identity Crisis, Real Talk Therapy 101. And so diving right into our conversation, one of the things that I try really, really hard to do is not keep you guys for an extended amount of time. I know everybody's attention span is what it is. Some of us can't, hold our attention span longer than 5, 10, 15 minutes. Some people want to sit and have a 2-hour conversation. Right now, I'm trying to keep it in the window of anywhere between 30, 40 minutes at the most if I get really passionate and get into it and go over. But like I said, I do use reference cartoons, movies, real life situations. One thing I don't do, and let me go ahead and put that disclaimer out there, I don't call names. I don't name places where I used to work. I don't do any of that stuff, but I talk about the experiences when I was there or people, just my life. I reference it. I just don't call out anybody individually. So if it's somebody out there that feels a certain kind of way, 9 times out of 10, you've heard something that you can relate to, and I need you to know it's cool. I'm cool, so you should be cool. It's my, my story, and I have the autonomy to tell it the way that I lived it. And, so do you or anybody else. Just, use your own platform. And at any rate, as we were talking about addictions, last week I had told y'all, that's right, I have some peach crush. If anybody in Laurinburg, Scotland County area that watches or subscribes to my channel knows where I can find this locally, so I don't have to keep running up the road to try to get it, or call my cousin who brought me like 3 cases when we had our family reunion back at the end of August. And I may do that when I get out, finish today's video. Call my cousin and see if she could just ship me some cases, because this, if you like peach, and if you're trying to wean yourself off of caffeine, Crush is a caffeine-free soda. So, I encourage y'all, try it. Lord have mercy. This is some good stuff. All right, so this week we're going to talk about our identity. Because last week, we learned different ways to fall in love or to get to know who we were all over again. Remember, as your life changes, you change. And you have to adapt to the way life is right now. You all have heard me reference to the COVID-19 crisis that hit all of us by surprise. None of us had lived through a pandemic that we're living when March 2020, and for some people it started in December of 2019, but for me, my family, my town, my state, it hit us around March 19th, somewhere in there, or March 9th could be, 2020, and we were mandated by the state of North Carolina that we could only be around extensively small groups of people. And for the type of work I was doing at the time, being a CADC facilitator, and at that time it was called a CSAT. The acronyms changed so much, but at any rate, I was facilitating a substance group and a couple of substance groups. I had a morning and an afternoon group, and during that time you could only be around small groups of people. And what the state mandated and put into place for us was, for one, the staff, the place that I worked at, there was more than 10 people that were staff. So you couldn't even have more than 10 people in one place at one time, because this thing was spreading so rapidly. Nobody knew what was going on. There was a lot of death. There was a lot of the news putting stuff out there. And it was a very, very scary time. And I can only speak again from the perspective of how I felt during that time. And during COVID-19, I actually did experience an identity crisis. I was already aware of, germs, washing my hands. I was already carrying baby wipes, not necessarily the little handy wipes or things, with hand sanitizer. I've never been a fan of because I just felt like it rubbed the germs all in you. But a wipe, you can wipe that stuff off, throw it away. Wasn't a big fan of wearing gloves because it's my personal belief that gloves didn't do nothing but transfer what you touch from one place, to another. And Lysol was a big thing for me because I have seasonal allergies and I have sinuses and allergies. So during the cold seasons, my immune system just seemed I could get a common cold or whatever. So Lysol was a big thing for me if people were sick. So to have all the things that they said we needed to have to ward us against this disease or whatever COVID-19 was called, whatever it was, the panic and the pressure was put out there for us to take care of ourselves and, to make sure we wash our hands. And, that was something that I would always do. Constantly, cleaning my hands, warm soap and water, sing the happy birthday song twice, not one time when you're washing your hands. But it was just something that I was accustomed to doing already, and I would hope that the rest of the world was too. But again, I can only speak from the perspective of me. But it was like these basic things that they were telling us to do, not to get this bug or whatever you want to call it. From March to the time I found out about it to November of 2020, I did everything the CDC told us to do. We had to wear masks because you couldn't breathe in certain stuff, all of these things. And I adapted some behaviors that were not who I was before COVID-19. So hence came in my identity crisis. I'm still who I am when it came to germs, but my fear and the panic was heightened to a whole new level because of what the CDC said could happen. And I didn't want to get this disease because initially it was kids couldn't get it. Older people would die from it if they got it. Then, they started sending down all these different mandates. And like I told you guys, I love my grandmothers. They're elderly. So I wanted to be able to still visit my grandmothers. I wanted to be able to see them. We weren't supposed to hug and touch. All of the things that made us social beings. Now we can't do it for fear of getting someone sick or having someone, get this disease and their immune system couldn't fight it. And so in my family, I was the first one, despite me doing everything they told us to do times 50, I was the only one who got COVID first. So here I am with COVID. And what happened, went to work, a couple of people were sick, we're spraying the Lysol. They went home, ended up having to go get tested, and then now everybody at the place where I work had to go and get tested. And during that time, the tests were limited. Where you could go and get it was limited. The price was, limited if you didn't have insurance or what have you. But thank God for my family and my support network, because one of my sister-in-laws found a place that we could go and you could get tested and you could find out, the same day. But prior to that, the only place we knew to go was either to the emergency room or urgent care. So on Sunday, this was a Friday, when we found out about the person at work. So that Friday. So that Friday we had to leave work, go get tested. I went to the local urgent care, and I went home and I told my husband, and he's just like, well, we'll just wait and see what the results are. So on Sunday, whenever I called to find out, because there was that 2-day wait, the lady said to me, yes, you tested positive. You need to quarantine for 14 days. You don't need to be around anybody. Unfortunately, there's nothing medicine-wise that we can give you. You need to get all the sunlight you can get. You need to drink orange juice, and you need to eat, and all of this stuff. And immediately I panicked. And of course, I wanted my husband to leave because of the type of work that he did and who he was around. And when I tell you guys, although I was sick in those 14 days, and I had to tell my mom, tell my grandma, and I didn't tell a lot of people. I don't know why, but a lot of us are private when something's wrong with us. So I didn't tell a lot of people, but the job knew. And of course, the people on the job were supposed to know because I had been in contact and I had worked all week and I had been around clients. But needless to say, even though we used all the precautions, and I used the precautions times 1,000, I still got COVID. And during those 14 days, I can sit here now and tell you, in the midst of my identity crisis during the initial phases of COVID-19, I picked up a feeling of fear and panic that I had never experienced in my life. I was afraid to go to sleep at night because I thought I was going to die because of what I saw on the news. I was afraid for anybody to bring me something to our house because I didn't know how long germs would linger. I didn't want to talk to people on the phone because the isolation was killing me on the inside. I was, at that time, I was real heavy social butterfly. And so I didn't post on Facebook. I didn't do any of the things that I would normally do because I was in this house by myself, scared that I was going to die. And the worst thing that I remember about the COVID, because to me it was just a really bad sinus infection, but with a headache, and of course not being able to taste and not being able to smell were symptoms of my allergies already. That happened to me every year at the change of the season. So, that symptom, all of the symptoms really, wasn't something new outside of what I would get when I would get a really bad sinus infection. But the way that it was presented caused me to take on some things in my identity that I didn't normally have. And so now I'm in a crisis because I'm going along or believing what's being presented by the media. And I'm afraid. And even though, my husband called, we FaceTime, with the sleep every day, I couldn't go get food. So people had to bring stuff to me. And it was, it was fall. It was deep in fall, getting ready to turn into winter. So it would be too cold to go outside and get some freaking sun. And, it was just a really hard time for me. And some symptoms of my depression diagnosis came back times 1,000 because it was just like all these people are dying. They don't have enough places to send the bodies. The morgue can't process them. All this is going on in my head. And in the midst of those 14 days, every day that I did get a little bit of sleep, because I slept during the day. My job, remember I told you, I stayed up all night. I binge watched all kinds of stuff because your girl was scared to go to sleep. It was towards the end of the 14 days. Needless to say, my husband did get tested and he was negative. So we did find out that even though he was around me that Friday, Saturday, until we found out that Sunday, a little bit of what they said would happen to you became a myth to us. So, it was just like trial and error. But I said all of that to say, when you are in an identity crisis, it's when you're dealing with something you've never dealt with before, and instead of you being true to yourself, you start taking on pieces of what's out there in the world. And it's hard to do. Or it's hard not to do. I'm sorry. It's really hard not to believe the hype when you don't know what happens. So needless to say, back then, I was way more cautious about catching COVID than I am now. Back then, if you was a mask maker, I probably spent half my salary with you. I found a man that lived near the Lysol factory up there in New York, New Jersey, somewhere. I would reach out to him. I think I still got his number, but I found him through either eBay or Amazon because, you couldn't find this stuff. And he had it in bulk. And we formed a relationship during COVID through text. I never talked to him. Can't tell you what he looks like. But I bought some stuff called Microvan to begin with. And then I started to think about the elderly people that couldn't get any. And I started to think about, my mama over there, both of my grandmas. I had aunts, uncles, my in-laws, everybody, the people I work with. If I knew you, and even if I didn't know you, I was spending a large amount of my salary then on getting those supplies so I could give it to my loved ones. And I'm packing safety bags for people and not realizing that during the midst of my identity crisis, after I got over the initial fear and panic of having COVID in its early stage, I had it in this early stage, that I still found my way back to who I was. I still eventually got Ebony back. The hype went away. The fear, it went away. After those 14 days, I went and got tested. I'm negative now. I'm back out here in the world. I was still careful, but I wasn't overly careful because now my mission was to make sure nobody else attached to me or unattached to me got COVID. So, I wasn't looking for anything in return. I don't do favors. I'm just a helper. I want to help people. I told you guys that early on. And so my mission was just to help my church. We couldn't find it. And so I would donate to the church so we could keep it clean and we could go in there and have service, when we could before everything went on a complete lockdown. But prior to that, I just got back to who I was on the other side of those 14 days. And so while in an identity crisis, you don't have to hold on to those things that you pick up while you're struggling with who you are. So before COVID, I had a sense of fear, but it's not a major sense of fear. It's a lot of stuff that I'm not afraid of. And I told you guys before, I don't know if that's good or bad, but I didn't have that heightened sense of fear, before that. I didn't have the heightened sense of, because now after that, y'all, I wore the gloves, but now I went through so many gloves because once I used them, I threw mine away. Because like I said, it's a one-time use. If we were able to go and get something to eat and I would see the people with gloves on, by the way, I'm sorry, because money has the most germs on it, but me or nobody else, I don't think, was leery of handling money with our hands. So I'm just be real, because it's exchanged all over the world in our currency. But at any rate, if I went somewhere to get something to eat and the person, took my money, did the cash register, and then handed me my bag of food, when I got home, I would spray the bag before I would even take the food out, because I had that heightened sense of, what if they got COVID and they don't know? And I don't know how long they had on these gloves or how long they make them, exchange these gloves. We actually went through preparing our own meals for a lot during that time. We didn't eat out. But like I said, it was just that I picked up that heightened sense of fear and I put it in the atmosphere. If somebody around me was sick after that, oh my God, they got COVID, oh my God. And I'm running to some of these places getting tested and won't even around the person who's supposed to have had it. So in that, what I'm saying is, once you deal with a crisis in who you are, you've got to take the time to figure out if what you've picked up and added to your identity is going to become a permanent part of who you are or a temporary portion of who you are and what you're going through in that moment. Because if you don't, it's going to lead you into tomorrow's segment if you aren't able to leave those things behind. So a crisis is only for a moment. You have to put individuals in a crisis plan in place of to who you can call and what you can do when you're in that crisis, and then leave that stuff where it's at. If not, that crisis will soon become part of your identity, and I would have still been walking around here germaphobe, still sending my money. Well, we can get Lysol now, so I wouldn't have been sending my money to the person. But at any rate, I would have still been overly exaggerating the need to stay protected, from COVID. And it's sad, but it's true. It's still out there, but I don't have that sense of fear like I once had before. When I lose my sense of taste and smell, I don't automatically go to COVID, because that was something that was happening to me before I even knew what COVID was. But if I didn't take the time to remind myself of who I am, I wouldn't have been able to pick up on that. And so today, as we go into this week's segment, I want to encourage you all, keep tapping back into who you are and who you were before you took your first sip of alcohol, before you took your first hit of crack, before you allowed that relationship to become something that you couldn't handle, before you became a victim of domestic violence, before you became the batterer of the victim in domestic violence, before you were not a good parent and didn't do what you needed to do, before, you had this gambling addiction or this sex or porn addiction, before you got caught out here in a crisis. Identify with who you were, or at least the parts of who you were that you want to carry forward as you're going through these uncharted waters, finding your way through where you may have been stuck. And I can tell you, it's a lot of work to do, but you have to be willing. And if you're doing it for you, then you gotta know that it's worth it. So thank you guys for joining me today. Want to ask that if you haven't already, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. You can see the contact information in the bio of the page. Again, some more information will be coming down pretty soon. If you have some topics, some comments, some things you want to share, just some information that you want to give out, please do so. If you'd like to be a guest, please let me know. And in the meantime, let's get back to who we are, being more self-aware or more aware of ourselves in a way that we can make it through some of these things that we just felt like before we could never get through it. And until next time, you guys be safe. Thanks. Bye-bye.